Welcome to another episode of the SWISH Show. As always, I'm your host, Ryan Tuckwood. Today's guest is joining us all the way from the USA, which is pretty exciting. He is the best-selling author of Selling from the Heart and the co-host of the Selling from the Heart podcast. Over 30 years of in-the-field sales experience within the B2B technology space. He knows what it takes to become a successful sales professional. I know we're going to learn an awful lot today. He is leading a revolution and a movement in authenticity, integrity, and substance in the sales profession, which is why, of course, I wanted to get you on our show, because our whole brand is Swish, which is selling with integrity and selling honestly.
I love it. I love it.
And we stumbled across that acronym by accident as well, which we might get to. But Mr. Larry Levine, welcome to the Swish Show. How are you, sir?
Hey, what's going on? It's so cool to be here, Ryan. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you for joining me. Yeah, we obviously had a bit of a catch up just before we cracked on there, and I feel like we did like a micro podcast by accident. And I think when you put two people that are fanatical about ethical sales or integrity selling, I think we could probably chew each other's ear off for the rest of the day. So I wanted to get into it so we can make sure we get as much value from you as possible, because I know your time is precious. But in your words, away from that little bio that we always do in a podcast, who's Larry Levine?
You know what? That's great. That's so cool, because I've been on podcast after podcast and no one's asked, so I appreciate it. I always tell people I'm just a guy. And in fact, I was just, as we're recording this morning, because there's time difference between us, I got in this very conversation with somebody, and I just told them, I go, I'm just a guy. I'm just a guy who spent almost 30 years in the office technology channel. I sold copiers my whole life in Los Angeles. I stood out because I did things the way that I felt needed to be done. I walked with integrity. I built genuine relationships. I brought my heart to the forefront. I outcared everybody. And now I'm just bringing that to the forefront. It's long overdue. I'm a humbled guy. I say what I mean. I live through it. I'm congruent. I'm heart-centered. I'm consistent. And I'm just getting the message out there and building a movement that it's okay in sales to bring your heart to the forefront. It's okay to bring deep sincerity and substance. I bring it to my professional life. I bring it to my personal life. I bring it to how I volunteer out in the community. I always say, you get what you get. This is exactly who I am.
Yeah. Congruency, right? I love that. I outcared everybody. You just care. There's caring, but then there's being able to communicate that you care as well, right? So how do you, or were you intentionally, or maybe unconsciously showing that you cared? Like, how can we show that we care? Because I know some people actually care, but they don't know how to communicate that.
You bring up a great point, because I'm a big believer that words matter and message matters, and how you combine those will forever change a conversation. So when I talk about outcare, I was never the smartest salesperson out there. In fact, I've always gone on to say people would outsmart me, people would outsell me, people would outstrategize me, but nobody was going to outcare me. And I was always like this. It's how I was raised. It's how I carried myself. Relationships to me mean everything. So when I engage with people, I'm a big believer, Ryan, that we've all been given a gift. We've all been given a gift. We just have to learn and uncover what that gift is. And that gift is something that comes easy and natural to us. Well, it became easy and natural for me to connect and relate to people, whether that be in my personal side of life or my professional side of life. So when I had my by the way, I still have my sales hat on, but when I was in my corporate sales days, I would lean in my conversations. I'd bring in excitement to my conversations. I would change the tonality. And the reason why I say this is I'm a big believer in, I'm not bringing any doctoral stuff to this or psychological stuff to it. It's just based on observation of decades. I'm just a big believer that people today they have this keen sixth sense, and they can sense when you're there and when you're not there. They can sense when you're sincere and you're not sincere. They can sense when you're throwing BS out at them or not. Unless you're an extremely good actor and actress, but at some point you're going to get exposed.
Yeah.
And I think, what was that?
Sorry, I was going to say, do you think we've become more aware of that over the years?
Yes. And I think we've become massively aware of it. So if you look at where trust and credibility sits in the sales world today, it is at astronomically all-time lows, and it really concerns me. So, I don't care what reports out there, right? Insert name of the company who does studies on trust and credibility. And year after year, decade over decade, sales always ranks amongst the bottom when it comes to the least trustworthy. But yet, if throughout the world, right? If salespeople out there don't sell anything, money doesn't move through the economy at the rate that it needs to.
Yeah.
And sales is a very noble profession. It is extremely noble. I mean, I didn't grow up in the most sexiest sales industry there was. I mean, heck, I sold copiers. I sold things that broke, right? At the most inopportune times. But I go, it's the way you carry yourself. In fact, it was just right before we hopped on this podcast. I do a daily dose of inspiration. It goes out Monday through Friday to, people in my community. And the title of the one, it's going to come out tomorrow, Thursday, my time, but Friday, your time. And the title of those, what do you want to be known for? And that's what I want salespeople and sales leaders to really understand is, what do you want to be known for? What do you want to be known for in a world where they don't trust salespeople? They think, you're full of what, and they're skeptical about everything you have to say. You control the narrative, and you can control the perception of how people perceive you. It's, do you want to be congruent with it? And do you want to live your sales life full of integrity and authenticity? Or do you want to be like everybody else because you don't want to stand out? You'd rather fit in. And, leading a life full of integrity and authenticity and sincerity in sales, you're going to stick out. You're going to stick out in the right way, especially with what we've gone through the last couple of years around the world.
Yeah, 100%. How do we balance that then, right? Because the way I read that is, right, we're leading with the client's best interest at heart. Like, it should always be about the client and making sure we're doing right by them. How do we override the pressure from management and to hit sales targets and like almost being forced, and this is just a personal experience, being forced to take shortcuts and create false urgency and scarcity upon people just to make a sale?
Yeah, oh man, this could be the whole rest of the entire podcast, Ryan. But I'm gonna answer it. If you'll allow me to answer it in a couple different ways, are we cool with this?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So I'm gonna go back to when I was in sales, and I got into many disagreements over this. Because, here we are, depend on, if you're on a calendar year, we're in quarter 4, we're heading towards not only the end of a quarter, but the end of a fiscal year. And the pressure from top down on salespeople now, I can only imagine what it's like.
Yeah.
And I would never sacrifice what's inside of me to make a sale at the end of the month. I fought with it. Now, early on in my younger days, I would do it. I would do it because, right, maybe I lacked the self-confidence and I lacked the believability in myself. And maybe the relationships and the credibility I had with my clients and potential clients weren't as strong as they were in the later parts of my career. Because I think you mature over time in sales. Yeah. And I would get into some really deep battles with management. You need to do this. You need to do this. You need to get that ball over the goal line. I said, I'm the one who has to deal with with them afterwards, right? And I'm a big believer in this, and I want everyone to key in on this. And sales leaders who are listening, you got to key in on this. Once you give a price discount at the end of the month, you forever set the stage that that's the way it is. It's going to be so hard for you to recoup the money that you lost. And I didn't want to sacrifice my integrity.
Yeah.
And see, this is why I'm a big believer in this. And I write about it in Selling from the Heart, is if you want to have an ever-flowing sales funnel, you must build an ever-flowing relationship funnel. You must make some things non-negotiable. And the reason why I say this is there were certain things that I did every single day that were non-negotiable. And that was prospecting. That was connecting high, wide, and deep in my customer base and my targeted account base. That means I was opening up new conversations. I was consistently doing things every single day that would advance stages of sales and relationships and so forth, that I didn't have to start sacrificing and price discounting for the sake of getting a deal. I was into this for the long run as opposed to the short term. Now, if you would have asked me this question 30 years ago when I first got into sales, I probably would have delivered a different answer. But when sales leadership down is transactional in nature, I want everyone to key in on this. You have transactional customers. They will be replaced by somebody else who comes along and delivers a better transactional conversation.
Oh, nice. I like that.
And let's just think about this. There's some businesses out there. I'm not here to disrespect anybody when I say this, Ryan. There's some massive business that's been built in transactional oriented style, and that's fine. And that's perfectly okay. But if you want to have consistent clients who come back for more and come back for more and come back for more and refer people to you and refer people to you, you got to take that transaction from a transaction to a transformational experience. And you can't do that by every single time you wait till the last week of the month and you just lower the price and hope they sign. And all of a sudden at the beginning of the month, you act one way. And at the end of the month, you act completely different. Salespeople and sales leaders out there, you have trained your customer and your buyers to beat you up over the head for a price discount because you allow it. And you don't understand the value that you bring to the market. You don't understand the experience you bring into the market. And my apologies if I'm being direct, but I've never been one to waver from the truth.
I think it's spot on, and my experience was the same. And maybe you can talk to me about your experience then. Like when I first got into sales, I had that pressure, right? And I didn't know that. Building, I love that, not transactional, build a transformational experience. I didn't know that I could create an experience for people. I didn't know that I could build a relationship. I just thought that I had to get to the end of the script and ask for the business. And is that a limiting belief that we have internally, do you think? And can that only grow over time, or is that just dictated by the environment that we're in?
Ooh, that's good. A couple things is, in the very beginning, and I want to key in on this because there's some people that are going to listen in on this and they're going, I get what you're saying, and they're going to fill in the blanks with how they fill in, the rest of the sentence. I'm a big believer relationships are everything. Relationships drive revenue over time. But in the very beginning, that person may not know you very well, may not like you, may not trust you, may not think you're credible. So how are you going to build a relationship with them in the very beginning? I think in the very, very beginning, salespeople out there and sales leaders, you got to build trust and credibility instantaneously. You have to make somebody feel comfortable enough with you that they will start sharing things, intimate things about their company that they aren't sharing with somebody else. So, and then it's okay to then build these monumental, deep, meaningful, credible relationships with people. But in the very beginning, I think way too many in sales get caught in the friend zone, and the friend zone doesn't get you anywhere, right?
How do we get out of the friend zone?
You got to bring value. You got to educate people. You got to bring insight. You got to share how you've been helping other people. You got to share what you know about them, their business, their industry, what's going on with other people just like them. bring to the table things you've been discussing with people just like them over the last 30, 60, 90 days. That's how you're going to get somebody to stop and go, this is somebody I want to talk to.
Yeah.
But you keep, I want to go back to something that you said, because you'd said self-limiting beliefs just a little bit ago.
Yeah.
And it's why I wrote Selling from the Heart the way I did, Ryan, is I looked back on almost 3 decades in sales in the office technology space. There wasn't one sales manager. This key on this, I call them sales managers, not sales leaders. Huge difference.
Yes.
I had more dysfunctional sales managers than I had regular sales managers, and I never had a sales leader. Sad, but I never had a sales leader. That's why I held myself to a higher degree of standards than most. I was my own personal sales leader. Stop and think about that one for a moment for all those salespeople that are out there. And there wasn't one sales manager in any company that I worked with, Ryan, that said this: team, guess what? Over the next 30, 60, 90 days, over the next 3 months, we're going to take a deep journey together, and we're going to all work on how to become the best versions of ourselves. Not one sales manager ever did that on any sales team I was at. And I go, that is sad.
Yeah.
So when I decided that it was time to bring Selling from the Heart to the forefront, I devoted the first half of the book to working on yourself, because I'm a big believer that the inner work that you do in sales on your heart, mind, body, and spirit will catapult the sales success that you have out in the marketplace. And I talk a lot about sales chaos in the beginning of Selling from the Heart. And when we have deep chaos and there's no congruency, it's hard to really go out there and become that sales professional that we all can become. So I talk a lot about, right, uncovering who you are through self-reflection, self-care, self-awareness. Spend the first hour of the morning working on yourself. And this does matter over time. And there's some people that may not get it, and that's okay. But it's hard, right? Sales is chaotic. I always, I talk sales is a full contact sport. You're going to get the what kicked out of you, and you got to pick yourself up and you got to move on. You got to shake it off and so forth. But if you're scattered all in the inside, it's hard to go out there and do business. And I'll share this. If you have a hard time taking care of yourself, how are you going to take care of your clients? How are you going to help your clients do better business if you can't help yourself become the best version of you? If you can't take care of yourself and manage yourself and lead yourself, how can your clients look at you and go, how can you help me do better business? Think about that one for a second.
I've heard you reference similar, where you spoke about if you can't influence yourself, how can you influence others? If you can't lead, if you can't manage yourself, how are you going to lead and manage others? Where is the challenge with that, right? So I'm working on myself every single day. Where is that block for us to step out of our own comfort zone? I mean, if we use the word influence for a second, right? How can I influence myself to change initially when something might seem a little bit scary? Have you got any little insights there?
I would say that the biggest thing that helped me through this were a couple things. I invest in myself in multiple different ways. So I had business coaches, mentors, accountability partners, people that I'd lean on, close friends of mine that I would share things with. And it's hard to do this alone. It really is. And I share this, Ryan. I'll be 57 years old in a couple of days as we're recording this. And I didn't realize a lot of this until I got right at 39, 40 years old.
I'm 39 now. Perfect. I'm going to get it.
It's all good. So, very, very early on in my career, I was very observant, and I would watch what I thought top salespeople were doing. And I kind of mirrored and mimicked that and so forth. I think like a lot of people in sales do. But here's what I started to learn. It wasn't me. I was trying to become what the top 1, 2, 3% of the sales team was. And we talked about congruency, and I wasn't congruent. And I knew it. So that's when I started to do work on myself. But then I got to a point where I was stuck, and I knew it. And it was about 39, 40 years old. And I was still the number one person on my sales team, but mentally I knew I was stuck. There was something missing. I just didn't know what it was. And I'm a big believer that things happen at the right time in your life. And I was just in the right place at the right time in the right moment. I saw somebody speak in the community that I live in. And this person spoke to a group of youth. I just happened to be in the audience. And I loved the person's message. And afterwards, I introduced myself. We exchanged some pleasantries. Fast forward, he became my first business coach. And we spent the first 90 days together working on myself. And I shared where I was stuck and so forth. Point being is, if you feel like that and you're not quite sure where to start, or so, reach out. There's mentors out there. There's people in your inner circle. Create accountability partners. And that's all I did at 39, 40 years old. Yeah, I made a financial investment, best financial investment I ever made.
Yeah.
And, now it leads me to, I have my own personal coach. I have a bunch of mentors. I have accountability partners. I have what I call personal boards of directors. So if I have a financial situation, I call that person. If I have a spiritual issue, I call that person. Something I just need for life, personal relationships, I call somebody else. Now, I love talking about this stuff, Ryan, but it plays out so well in sales, actually in life. But in sales, it's just tough. And there's a lot of people in sales who will just wake up in the morning, right? They wake up, they hit their, I don't even think anyone uses, I'm going to date myself for a second, right? So I was just going to say, everybody hits their alarm clock, but what's an alarm clock anymore? Because everyone's got their alarm on their phone.
I'll tap it on the side, yeah.
You just keep hitting the snooze on your mobile phone. But, they get up, they do that. They have a cup of coffee, they eat a banana, they read the newspaper, they hop in the shower, and they start their work off. And you wonder why you're really never getting anywhere, and you get burned out. I just learned all this stuff along the way through business coaches, life situations, on how to hold myself accountable and grow. And I just knew that the way I started my morning in sales was the way I was going to end my day in sales. If I started it at the right way, things were going to progressively get better throughout the day. But if I started my morning in a really chaotic way, I know it was just going to unravel throughout the whole day. If you get what I'm saying.
Yeah, 100%. I'm very passionate about this same message as well. Like, we talk about sales training and everybody wants the skills, and 99% of people come to us because they want to learn how to overcome objections. And like, if that's your problem, then we've got bigger problems. But there's mindset and the skill set. But so I'm very passionate about that. But there's one thing that you said in there. You mentioned burnout. And when I started this business in 2014, we went in the co-founder, who's now exited. We went pretty much 2 years without having a day off, 7 days a week, 14-hour days. And we used to wear that as a badge of honor. And there certainly wasn't any balance. And eventually we decided to take a break. Me and my wife went over to, well, my girlfriend at the time went over to Bali. And 2 days in, I collapsed in the middle of the day. And it was almost like inertia, like all of this stress and all of this 100 miles an hour life had just hit me in the back of the head. And I actually had a fit in the middle of a restaurant. Woke up on an oxygen tank and sick all down. I mean, not a nice story, but true story. And I'm always interested, like, my lessons for that were that I didn't have that balance, right? I didn't have the people around me to say, hey, you need to slow down. Like, firstly, have you had that sort of burnout ever in any sort of capacity? And if you have, like, what lessons have you had from it?
Oh, I can relate. I can relate to everything that you just said. I'll tell full disclosure, I'm a workaholic, 7 days a week. 7 days a week. I wake up at 3:00 in the morning Pacific Standard Time, so I'm in outside the Los Angeles marketplace.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I've just learned that I do my best work early in the morning. I have some me time, and I just get right into it.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, I forgot what the on-off switch looks like. And does it catch up to me? Absolutely. Absolutely, it catches up to me. But what I do is I know now I'm in tune with when it happens. So I just learned to break.
So you can see the triggers.
I get the triggers, but here's a hard thing is I still work 7 days a week.
Yeah.
It's just Saturdays and Sundays. It's just dark 30 in the morning. If you understand the expression, it's like it's early in the morning is when I still do some work, so that by the time it's morning time for most people, I've put in 4 or 5 hours of work already, and then I can shut it off.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
But it's hard because I love what I do.
Yes.
I love what I do. And when you love what you do, you just do it, right? You don't think about it. And it just, there's a lot of people who have a job and then there's a career. But I will tell you this, we're both entrepreneurs. I was forced into entrepreneurship. It's not at 50 years old. I didn't wake up one day and say, hey, I think I'm going to try entrepreneurship. No, I had a life-altering moment at 50 where I was exited out of a high-paying corporate sales job. And so I found myself at 50 years old without a job. So I had to decide, do I go back and be a VP of sales and continue to do what I do? Or do I go do something else? And through the coaching of my wife and my near and dear friend, who's now, with me at Selling from the Heart and our podcast and so forth, they just said, it's time for you to take this message and what made you you and go out into the world and spread it. So I went out into entrepreneurship and just, right? I've lived every roller coaster, and I hate riding roller coasters, but I've ridden every emotional roller coaster in entrepreneurship you could possibly ride. However, I've learned more about myself and life between the ages of 50 and like I said, I'll be 57 in a couple of days. I've learned more in that short window about me, myself, what I'm capable of, and how I can help others than I did in the last 30 years.
Yeah. Wow. Amazing.
Because I've gone on the journey of uncovering who I am and so forth. And, for people that are out there that are listening is, I'm not going to sugarcoat anything. I don't BS anybody. You get what you get with me. But I will tell you this, I'm a true practitioner. I'm a true practitioner of everything that I shared. And when I work with sales teams and salespeople and sales leaders, I bring this right through a practitioner's point of view. I'm just not delivering this stuff. I'm deeply attached to this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And even you said something earlier about like being really open with people, like how do you connect with them? And I love the work of Brene Brown and being vulnerable. And I don't know if you get this in the corporate world, but I definitely seem to get it a little bit here, that especially like in the finance world or in the brokerage world, where it's like, well, no, Ryan, we're professionals. Like we've got to have our corporate hats on. I can't be vulnerable. I can't talk about my challenges. Like nobody cares. Like where do you sit on that?
So by the way, I love Brene Brown. One of these days, I'm going to either meet her in person or she's going to come on my podcast. That's just a personal goal of mine.
Amazing.
But here's what's interesting. I want to touch on what you just said, because I get it all the time as well. And, Brene Brown in several of her books talks about you got to create boundaries and so forth. I'm a big believer in creating boundaries. But here's what's interesting. We're all humans. We have a personal life. We have a professional life. And here's where I'm going to challenge people to think about this just for a second, is if you can act one way in your personal life, why do you have to act completely polar opposite in your professional life? I want everyone to stop and think about that one for a second. We hide behind titles. Now, we're going to make this sales centric just for a moment, Ryan. But, sales people will hide behind their title, account executive, corporate sales manager, major account executive, whatever acronym, whatever title a salesperson wants to give themselves, they hide behind it. Then they go have this conversation with Ryan Tuckwood, and Ryan's the CFO at SWISH. And then the persona battle. Guess what? I'm a human. Ryan's a human. Why can't we have a conversation? And this is where I get into congruency versus incongruency. And I've always said, vulnerability to me is a big sign of strength, massive sign of strength. But most people in sales view it as a sign of weakness. And here's where I'm going to go with this. And I'm just going to say it. The sales world is full of braggadocious, bravado behavior. Forever and a day, it's been a male-dominated industry and profession. But that's why when you talk about things like heart and sincerity and vulnerability, a lot of people are going to shy away from it because it doesn't fit the bro culture. I mean, I've gotten into arguments. I've been made fun of. I've been poked at in sales forever and a day because I brought this to the forefront, and I'm okay with it. But I know as in our personal side of life, in the relationships that we build with people. And by the way, I have no doctorate in human behavior, psychology, or anything like that. I'm nowhere in the status of a Brene Brown or anybody like that. This is just through practice and observation and how I choose to carry my life, how I did it in sales and how I did it in my personal life. And this is what I want people to really understand is if you can bring vulnerability, sincerity, appreciation, love, respect in how you build your personal relationships, then why can't you bring that to your professional relationships? Stop and think about that for a moment. I will tell you this. Every one of my clients at Selling from the Heart, at some point in time, I will let them know the L word's going to come out. The L word is love. I tell each and every one of my clients that I love them. I appreciate them. I care for them. All my clients are in my phone. And I will randomly on the weekend just start texting my clients. Hey, I was just thinking about you. Just wanted to say I appreciate you. Hey, love you, man. I care about you. What are you and your wife up to this weekend? What are you and your husband up to this weekend? It's the same thing. If you guys, if everyone out there can do this in your personal lives, my challenge to all your listeners is do it in your professional life and watch what happens to conversations, connections, collaboration. Watch how deep that relationship goes and watch what starts to happen next.
It's such a powerful message. We had a new customer experience lady start with us in our CX division, and she's only been here about 12 weeks. And she said to me the other day, she said, "It's so refreshing to work at a company where your clients actually like receiving a phone call. Like they actually love the service that you provide." And I said, "Why do you think that is?" She was like, "I don't know, because the program works." And I'm like, "Nope." She's like, "I don't know, because of the results they're getting." I'm like, "Nope." I'm like, "It's because they know we care." And I often get laughed at because I've got one phone. And I'm like, my phone this is me. This is my personal, this is my professional. People text me outside of work. I respond to them. Yes, I might have to do it late at night when the kids go to bed, but I still do it. I still respond to every single message. And I know that's not overly scalable. I get that at some stage, but the word you said boundaries earlier, and I'm very passionate about managing expectations of clients. And in the early interactions, I talk about my daily structure. I talk about my family time from 5 o'clock till 8 o'clock, 5:30 till 8 o'clock every evening. And I will respond to messages outside of that. So is that what you meant by boundaries as well? Like in that facet, or do you mean like just boundaries in life and people around you?
Yeah, both, right? is here's where sometimes boundaries get you in trouble. A lot of my clients and soon to be clients know I get up really early in the morning.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm on the West Coast of the United States. On the East Coast of the United States, it's 3 hours ahead of me. And they put me to the test on this all the time.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. So the start of their morning, it's still dark 30 in the morning here in California. And they put me to the test all the time. But we talk about boundaries. I won't start any call until a certain time in the morning.
Yeah.
They know what time I get up because I'd let everybody know, and I'd let them know it's part of my morning routine. I go, you're going to take me out of my morning routine. So I keep little boundaries like that. The other thing is, right, I'm a pretty much an open book. But again, there's certain boundaries you don't cross. And that's just right. I'll leave it at that because I think your listeners realize that, there's certain things that you just don't show and tell.
Yeah.
But I'm a big believer that if Ryan, you and I had a very first conversation together, right? We had some pleasantries through email. We had one phone call, which led to a meeting and so forth, right? Typical start of a sales process is I'm a big believer if we're going to take this and we're going to have a deep conversation. That means, and I'm the biggest advocate of this. Again, this stuff's not rocket science, right? People are looking for tips and tricks and tactics, things. This is just called human interaction. Is if I want Ryan to open up, then I got to go first. I got to share a little piece of me with Ryan before I can get Ryan to really start opening up.
Yeah.
So yeah, it requires some vulnerability, right? But I'm pretty confident and I believe in myself that I'm not going to put myself in some issue where Ryan's going to hold that over me. I'm just going to share a little bit about me, a little bit about my personal life, right? Hey, I just had a great time with my wife, right? We're married almost 30 years. I remember 28 years ago, this happened, right? Something that takes it away from business.
Yes.
And because all I know is we're humans, it's a human having a conversation with another human. Here's where I know sales leaders and salespeople struggle with. Ask them to open up a conversation for the first 5 minutes and not talk about business, not talk about, right? Their company, their product, their solution. Make somebody feel comfortable. And I'm not throwing deep scientific research at you right now. All I know is that the first 5 minutes of that conversation, they're deciding what happens next.
Yes.
They really are.
On the connection, which we can create it, right? It's like I said, there's no tips or tricks. It's just actually showing an interest. I remember one of our investors, one of the things he said to me when he came on board, he's in his 60s. I hope you don't mind me saying. And I first time I met him after we actually came on board, and I asked him why. I was like, "Why are you doing this?" Which is a bit of a silly question, but I was like, "Why are you doing this? Like, you're very successful. You don't need to." And he said 2 reasons. And he said the first reason was there's not a business or individual that cannot not benefit from better communicating the value of what they have to offer, which is what you guys do. And he said the second thing is, in his eyes, sales and communication is easy because all you have to do is be interested, not interesting. And that really stuck with me, is that we need to spend a disproportionate amount of our time being interested in them whilst figuring out how to get them to open up, which is exactly what you
this is what I'm listening to what you're saying. And I'm going back in time. I'm going to say this is about a year and a half or so ago, Ryan. We had a guest on the Selling from the Heart podcast. And this person dropped a bombshell right in the middle of the podcast. And I think I'm going to drop it right now because it ties in exactly what you just said. This person went on to say this: This is his belief in everything. I'm just sharing it. He says, I believe salespeople today are conversationally incompetent. Think about that one for a second.
I'm writing it down.
And I go, right. I'm listening to this, right? And Daryl's on the other end of this, and we know each other really well, right? So we could just tell in eye movement, we can speak like none other to each other on a podcast is through eye movement. And I gave him the eye movement, and he gave it back to me. And I go, before we go any farther, you got to peel this one back, right? Yeah. And this is what this person said. He says, salespeople, right, have been trained and coached forever to talk about company, product, solution, sales-centric type conversations. They're conversationally competent around that kind of stuff. And rightfully so, right? That's what moves the needle.
Yeah.
But in the very beginning, that's what may not move the needle. And where salespeople struggle with mightily is human-centric conversation. And he goes, that's why they said they're conversationally incompetent to be able to take that from connecting and relating to somebody and move that along and uncover what are those trigger questions? What are those trigger things that then takes it from Ryan and Larry are just having a conversation to all of a sudden Larry and Ryan are in a business conversation and no one really knew about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It just naturally started to happen. Amazing.
So good. So good. I'm conscious of your time, Larry, but I've got so many notes here, and I know.
Well, maybe if this goes well with your listeners, we could do a part 2 to this, Ryan.
Yeah, I think we might have to, because I know that there's a few areas where we've kind of just lifted up the hood and we've gone, right, that's enough for today. You can't have any more. But there's 2 more questions, and I'll let you enjoy the rest of your day. One of them is, like you've openly said, you're 57 in a couple of days' time. Well, where are we going next? What's next for Larry and the business and the message?
What's next is the outline for the second book is just around the corner. So, I had no idea, Ryan, what to expect when Selling from the Heart came to the forefront. The podcast came out 4.5 years ago. It's wildly successful. The book came out 3 years ago. I had no idea if 5 people would read the book, 100 people would read it. I had no idea what to expect. And here we are 3 years later, we built a movement all over the world around being your authentic self and bringing sincerity and substance to the forefront. And we're building a massive community around this. And we get to work with some really cool organizations. And from this, it's stemming the coming of my second book, which is going to stem from the last chapter. The last chapter, Selling from the Heart, is how to not be in an empty suit. And so the second book is No Empty Suits. And the subtitle is How Sales Professionals Build Trust in a Post-Trust World. And it's about how to build relationships and how to build trust and credibility. And it's all based on, and this is where a lot of our coaching and training is being developed right now as we head into 2022. It's about how do you build trust and credibility? And it's based on this equation. Because my business coach today says people remember things based on equations. So this is a lot of what we're bringing to market right now is our trust, right? How we build trust. And this is based on Selling from the Heart methodology. So we take Selling from the Heart as the overarching theme. And then we help sales leaders and sales teams build trust by helping their sales team build authentic relationships. And we combine that with meaningful value. And then we wrap that around inspirational experience and disciplined habits. And we give sales teams and sales leaders the tools to do this. So that's what's on the horizon for Selling from the Heart. Trust and credibility that we've talked about on the podcast are at an all-time low.
Yeah.
And, it's our vision and it's our mission at Selling from the Heart to bring authenticity to the forefront, to build authentic relationships and combine that with meaningful value.
Beautiful. I don't think it takes a rocket scientist to figure out why I got you on on our podcast. We're so aligned. It's silly, which is amazing considering on the other side of the world. I had Shuri Leviton on earlier.
Oh, Sherry's a sweetheart.
So amazing. Yeah, she was great as well. And I've had a great response to her episode, and I feel we're going to get the exact same response with this one. How can people connect with you if they would like to?
A couple different ways. If you want to find out anything you want about Selling from the Heart, you can go to sellingfromtheheart.net. If you want to find out about the book, you can go to sellingfromtheheart.net/book. And I always say, if you want to know what we're up to at Selling from the Heart, the latest, the greatest, just check us out on the Selling from the Heart podcast, and you can find our podcast on any podcast platform that's out there.
There's some amazing names and episodes on your podcast as well. So, Larry, thank you sincerely for joining me. I do appreciate you giving up pretty much an hour of your day, and I think we're gonna have to schedule episode 2 so we can close a few.
I'm all for it.